I pulled a few verses out of Ecclesiastes from the Old Testament for my lecture on Sunday. And it just got me curious again about some of the teachings there. So I went back to take a look at it and to read. And there's a poem in the first chapter. And, in a funny sort of way, it's rather grim, rather hopeless. And so I wanted to share it with you and really just let it roll around in your head and think about it for a minute. I'll share some thoughts on it, and in the comments, I'd be loving it if you did the same. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth, it remains the same forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, and hurries back to where it rises again. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, and yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome. More than I can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear has to have its fill of hearing. What has been will be again, and has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new. It was here already, long ago, before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. So there's a certain amount of grimness in that, if you're judging it for your life or trying to figure out what to do. There's several things about it. One thing that comes to mind that I wanted to share was a conversation I had with Swami Prabhupada over this little thing here, just this same passage, actually, many years ago. And I was saying, how can you say there's nothing new under the sun? I said, what about like computers and all this technology? Isn't that new? And he made a really great point. He said, well, not really. He said, what are you doing with that hasn't been done before? And that I had to hand to him. We're still writing letters. We're still communicating. We're still playing games, still entertaining ourselves. We're doing the same things, just with a different tool. So even though the tool is new, it didn't really introduce anything new. We just carry on the old things in a new way. So I thought that was interesting. But more what I take from this discussion or this poem is the need to completely approach life from another direction. And it has a lot to do with what we always talk about in these last few months anyway, this idea of being present, being in the moment. Because he's talking here about all the things that fall into time, space, and causation, which are just constructs of mind, tools or methods that the mind uses for organizing and for putting together and cobbling a world out of information it's getting from your senses. And so really life isn't about accomplishment. It isn't about building something. It isn't about doing something, because everything's been done before. It's one of the struggles I have about writing a book. A friend of mine asked me to write a book, and I keep thinking to myself, I should write a book. But then when I think about how many books have been written, I think, my goodness, why would I possibly add yet another tome to that pile of books that have already been written? And so the meaning of life, it's a great hint, lies not in things of time, space, and causation, not in things of linear time, not in building something that isn't already there, but in being. Learning to enjoy existence in life, learning to appreciate all the things that bring you joy, that bring you struggle, that cause growth, to be able to live richly in the moment by loving deeply, by caring deeply, by empathizing earnestly and sincerely, that's where a meaningful life happens. Because a life that happens on the time scale that he's talking about there, where you're building linearly something of the beginning and an end, you're always going to be living for that end, even in all the time that you're building. Learn to live in the now. Learn to appreciate everything. Shut down the mind and its focuses about where it's going and what it wants and what it needs and what it likes and what it doesn't like. And just call up a friend and enjoy talking to them. Sit down and have a soda pop and enjoy tasting it. Sit there with the idea of divinity in your mind and enjoy the seeping that it does in the body, the opening that it does in the mind. Think about things like love. Wonder about it. What is it? Where does it come from? What does it mean? Think about things like beauty. How can you define that? How do we know what it is? How do we recognize it when we see it? Think about music. Think about art. Think about all these complexities of life that are bottomless in their ideas, and yet so easily trivialized if we're in the mode of life that the writer of Ecclesiastes is talking about, where we're trying to create something meaningful in time, in space, in causation, when all of the meaning comes from deep within us, from who we are.